Thanks for having me today. My name's Ryan T. Williams and I'm here to talk about how I scaled my social media agency from zero essentially to a multi-seven-figure exit. My name's Ryan T. Williams. I've gone with the T to try and stand out a little bit more. I want it to sound like Michael J. Fox, like a bit like a Hollywood actor, but whether it does or not. But speaking of Hollywood, I often get compared to an action hero in Hollywood that it's not even the one that I particularly like. So I often get compared to someone in Hollywood, and it's not Brad Pitt, it's not Tom Cruise, it's no one cool. It's she's going well, isn't it? It's Matt Damon, and it proper divides opinion this because my wife, she just cannot see it at all. But one of my best mates, he's like blue in the face that I look like Matt Damon, especially since I shaved my head in the pandemic. This picture helps make up people's minds, but if I'd like do the pose, but when I've got a short jumper on as well, I actually have a bit of a tattoo that so people think it's a bit creepy, but I'll let you make your own mind up. So I'll go through how it all started. So I left school. Age of 18, I got an IT apprenticeship, typical IT geek, breaking things, fixing things, just loved doing that. I was a hands-on guy, that's why I got the apprenticeship. But this job, it was office-based over Stockport way, but actually, while I was there, they said to me, do you want to go out to South Africa, fixing things at the World Cup? And I'm a massive football fan, so I was like, well, yeah. So that was me at the age of 18, glorious South Africa, fixing IT at World Cup venue. So, and then this is, obviously you can see 2010. So I was kind of living the dream really. Young lad, IT job, going to all exotic places. Brazil was coming up for the next World Cup in 2014. However, during this process, I met my future wife, got married. I have to say she's the love of my life, otherwise she kills me. But no, we're still together today, which is great. So I got married, had my first child. So at this point, I was working in my IT job. I said I went to South Africa. They wanted me to go out to Brazil, but I had a wife and a child, and I was 21, 22. I was still relatively young, but I was homely, and I didn't want to go away again. So I stepped away from that job, unfortunately. Tried to get one closer to home, and I don't know if anyone's ever had that disastrous job moment, but that's what happened to me. It was a job that I stepped backwards in the IT world. Yeah, I was close to home, but it was dreadful. It's not on my CV. It's not on my LinkedIn. It doesn't exist. Just one of them kind of jobs. And then from there, I did one course while I was there, and I applied for a job here at Manchester Metropolitan University, and I ended up getting it. And we worked in the John Dalton building, which is the one that's been demolished behind now. So I remember this place. I was the one that when the Wi-Fi was down, they used to call. So it's quite ironic to be coming back kind of telling this story, not about IT, but about social media and business. So, but at this point in my life as well, I had my wife and my first child, but there was something else creeping into my life, and it was the app Twitter. So this was kind of 2013, and Twitter, as we know it as X now, Twitter was in its boom phase. There was followers piling in. It was way before the Elon Musk days. And I'm a massive football fan, so I was just playing around in the football field, the football world, and I was just getting a few followers here, a few followers there. And I always say it was like the extra bird in my life. So I had my wife, and I was cheating on her with with Twitter, because I was literally on it all the time. I was obsessed with it. It was a hobby / I don't know what it was. So yeah, but I always say like one tweet is all it takes. And what I mean by that was I did a couple of successful. I got the retweets, I got likes. And I was just hooked. I was hooked with making accounts. I'd make a few smaller accounts in the sport world. When I say that, I mean like 500,000 followers, which was like brilliant. Still working the day-to-day IT job, and this was just genuinely a hobby, just making funny accounts. But I thought being in this world, I'd use a meme, that famous meme. So at the time, this was me in the middle. Then Twitter was what was turning my head away from my well-paid, comfy IT job. So just going back to this point, so I was running Twitter in my spare time, and I was up one night with my baby daughter, flicking through the Sky channels. It was in the days, I sound old, the days before Netflix, so you just had to kind of flick what was on Sky at the time. There was a programme on called The Premiership Years, and it were bringing up stuff from the 90s, and there was one headline really caught my eye, and it said that Alan Shearer, I don't know, if you're into football, not into football, should I say, I do apologise, but for context, it said Alan Shearer broke the transfer record when one club buys him for £15 million, and nowadays it's like 100 million. So I had just had this idea in my head of, imagine like social media existed more in the 90s, what would the headlines look like? So using Sky Sports News, I came up with an idea for a parody account, and I called it Slow Sports News and just subtly doctored the name Slow so it looked like Sky. And well, I started posting the whole headlines with this, and this was an example of one. You can see the date, 16th, 2013. So going back to the Alan Shearer thing, I posted the tweet as if it was happening there and then. And as you can see from like the early engagement, 153 retweets, 89 likes, 11 replies. It was that kind of little eureka moment where people just started to follow it, and from the follow, they were all tagging their mates, winding each other up, because that one was a little bit obvious that it was a joke, but I was started to do more subtle ones that were a little bit more in line with current football, but say months apart. So say a major player had left a club, I'd tweet it a bit later and people would get confused. So it become a bit of a culture in the football world. And so then this account, it shot up to like 90,000 followers. And as you can imagine, for something that was a hobby, doing my day job here, and then in the other hand I had 90,000 followers, which for context is Wembley Stadium full. So in my right hand here I had access to over like 90,000 people. And at the time, I'm sure you've all heard of him, Stephen Bartlett. He was running a company called Social Chain, who were approaching accounts like mine, buying them to create what was his obviously future. So he approached me, him and his business partner, Dominic McGregor, and they offered me a job. They said, oh, we'll buy Slow Sports News and you come and work for us at Social Chain over in Manchester. And I'm here, and I'm like, there's no careers in social media. You can't, what you I thought you were mad. I thought, why are you paying people to tweet? And why are you paying people in this swanky office? So I thought, you're mad. And like, yeah, I kind of look back at it now and go, obviously he wasn't mad, neither was I. But at that time, I just wasn't ready to kind of work in that industry. But I have to think what could have been. I'm sure you all are aware what Stephen Bartlett looked like. But that was his old Social Chain offices that I went into. He had the slide, the ball pool. But I think that guy on the laptop there, that could have been me if I took that job with Stephen Bartlett, and I could have just become a number rather than a business owner. But whatever happened, fate happened, and I didn't join him at the time. So then, like I say, I was still at this moment in time where I had 90,000 followers, a nice little healthy following, but still a side hustle. Then I had what I call the breakthrough. And again, this is still in the Twitter world. In 2015, Brendan Rodgers was in charge of Liverpool. They were on a promotion charge and it all went, they were on a league charge and it all went wrong. If you're into football, Gerrard slipped, it's become infamous. But what Brendan Rodgers was doing at the time, he was saying stupid things, and he was compared to David Brent, who's a Ricky Gervais character. So I just made an account called Deluded Brendan. And it was just tweeting funny things that were from like a deluded point of view. And it got to a point where I was tweeting things during the football, after the football. Then the real Brendan Rodgers was saying similar things, and the popularity of that account just exploded. You can kind of see the numbers there, 3,000 people retweeting. And while this account shot up to about 250,000 followers, 300,000, and a company got in touch with me called the Football Blogging Awards. And what that was, they were out in the market, and it was an awards ceremony essentially for social media. Well, at the time was podcasting for websites, but they brought in a social media arm. And they told me I'd been nominated for the best social account for Deluded Brendan. And I kindly got back to the email, because I'd been to one of these events before and there was like hundreds of people there, and I didn't want my face there. It was a secret little side hustle I was running. It was just a fun, I worked here, I didn't want people to know. And then they got back to me and said, no, we really want you to come, like almost wink, wink. In other words, I'd won the award and they wanted me to go to collect the award. So I thought, well, how do I go to an award ceremony and not show my face? So I had an idea. I was going to take a mask like this, and I've still got it here. So my idea, stupidly at the time, was to go up on the award ceremony like this with a mask on, like that was any kind of idea. And I went there, I got to the event, and I sat down to a guy called Stan Collymore. He's an ex-footballer. But Stan Collymore, he's the loudest man in the room. If there was 1,000 people, you would hear Stan Collymore. He's loud, he's 6'5". I sits down next to him. Straight away he sees, because my name card said Deluded Brendan rather than my name, so he was like, because he knew the account, he was like, oh, this guy's Deluded Brendan, this guy's Deluded Brendan. He's got a Brummie accent, but I won't do it. This guy's Deluded Brendan, and he starts telling everyone. I was like, all right. I was like, I don't really want people to know. And he's like, oh, you don't want people to know, do you not? So he got out his phone and took a selfie of us and put it on his Twitter. And his Twitter account, he has just shy of 900,000 followers now, but at the time he had 600,000. And he posted this selfie of us and tagged the Deluded Brendan. This is Deluded Brendan. Well, that was it. My phone exploded. My family, my friends were like, we've seen you. And then my colleagues here were like, oh, I didn't know you ran this account. Didn't know you did all this in Twitter. Like, so my secret world had been rumbled at that point. And then this is the famous picture that he took. So he took it, and yeah, I just couldn't believe it. But the great news for that night is that I did win the award, and there was the mask that I was planning on wearing, but then it was pointless by that point. So yeah, it was a good do. But what this did was it skyrocketed the social media side of my life. Now it was a bit more real. It was a bit more. It wasn't a secret anymore. It wasn't this hobby. I could talk about it. I could meet people about it. So and then with this, so I'd like combined with all my following, I had like 500,000 followers at this point, which is crazy. Still at this point working. So I felt like I was going through like how Elton John probably did at Glastonbury, just like had all this crowd in my right hand and all the power to do with what I wanted. And the Twitter world at the time was what I call was the Twitter mafia. And what I mean by this was, say there was 100 successful Twitter accounts in different genres. You'd message them, you'd get to know them, you'd work out. There was probably only about 10 or 12 different people were running all these accounts. And that's why I kind of called it a mafia, because it was like this circle that you infiltrated. And I had like 500,000. And at one of these events, when I got talking, I met a guy called Matt, and he had 1 million followers. There was another guy there called Andrew. He had 500,000. So combined, we had 2 million followers. So we sat in a meeting together like, we've got 2 million followers at our fingertips here. And I mentioned before, there was Stephen Bartlett's company, Social Chain, we're doing similar. There was Lad Bible and Unilad, which I'm sure you've heard of. They were all building their own thing. It's like, well, how can we have a little piece of that pie? So we got together and decided, look, we can create something special here. And then that's what came like the biggest decision of my life. That was to kind of quit IT to do this full time. So it was interesting telling my family, my friends that, yeah, this decent IT job I've got, working at MMU, and it was obviously public sector work, so there was nice holidays, good pay, nice pension, comfy gig really. It was, I was giving it all up to think this is what, 2015, 2016, to do Twitter. That was what my thought. You what? You're doing what? You're doing Twitter? I was like, well, I'm working in social media, so it was wild, but I did it, and at this point I was getting the tram every single morning, and the two other guys who I'd met, who were my business partners, they weren't, so every morning they're messaging me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm stuck on the tram going to my job, so we kind of defined a model where I quit this to kind of do it full time, which meant like no more trams, like it was celebration, no more commuting. So I was started to work from home before it was cool, way before the pandemic. So that was I remember that picture because it was the very first day of working for myself, obviously with my business partners. That was my dog, bless him, he's not with us now, but he loved me being at home. And it was in my freezing cold garage on a rickety desk. And that heading is exactly what I was thinking. It was, well, now what? Like, I've got to pay the bills now. I've got to get this money rolling. And we got together with the two business partners because we were all massively in the sport world, as we said. So we were in the sport world, so we needed something that was a bit more all-encompassing. They talked about things like Lad Bible, Unilad. They was being able to post anything they wanted. So we come up with a page name that was called It's Gone Viral. And that was kind of the breakthrough moment of, it was a term at the time, oh, it's gone viral, have you seen such a thing, it's gone viral, or such a body's gone viral. So we created the page, and it just allowed us to post anything we want. And I've used this because of how awful it looks now, but it was in the really early social media days of the meme culture, where terrible impact font were just, and that was just taking the mick out of the 90s, how all the baggy clothes. But memes like that meant that everyone, friends were tagging each other, oh, do you remember when you had this? And they started to get thousands of comments and shares and likes. And essentially it started us to grow. And this page, it grew to like 1 million followers in months, and we were flying. And the way we started to monetize that was with a website. You kind of, what came out now as clickbait now, essentially, but it was that way. You'd be like, oh, you won't believe the car You won't believe the car Brad Pitt turned up in California last night, and it'd be a picture of Brad Pitt. You click on it to find out. Those are articles. I think BuzzFeed made them kind of famous. All your top 10s. When you can't click for ads, but we had like 1 million, 2 million audience, so we were posting to this, monetizing it okay. But it was like one of them first years of a startup where, like, if it could go wrong, it did. It was like, it was ridiculous. Like, I'll use that gif because, like, this is fine. We were doing this website, so we were using pictures here, there, and everywhere. We didn't have a clue about copyright. This guy got in touch and he was like, oh, these last 5 articles that you've done, you've used 10 of my photos, and I charged £1,000 a photo, so here's a bill for £10,000. And we're like, what? So we tried to ignore it. Email come the week after from his lawyer, and it was like, oh, God, we're not getting away from this. We were only earning like £1,000, £2,000 a month at the time. We suddenly had this bill looming of 10,000. Then, like, on top of that, we were trying to buy another Facebook page. We got scammed, lost all our money. And it was a really, really rough first year, but we learned so much from it, and we managed to just about get through. And we kind of had to pay that fine, but we did the usual. We did a bit of a payment plan with him, but we learned the hard way. So at that point, you start paying image subscription services, so you're using copyright-free material. And then within this, because we were posting copyright on Facebook, we lost our personal Facebook accounts, so I lost all our family, friends, connections, whatever. So I got to a point where I was thinking, why am I doing this? Like, I was working a lot, things were going wrong, but we learned a lot, and once we aligned, we were doing okay. And then I had my second child along this point, so suddenly this house that I had, a 3-bedroom house, felt like a 1-bed flat, essentially. I had a 4 or 5-year-old, and I had a baby screaming. So, and plus the start of business, it was time for me to kind of get out of that house. So we were in a position where it was for me time to escape. So we got a little 3-man office over in Rochdale, which is north of Manchester. So that was our first little office, which even still to this day, if you look, like, it had the yellow walls. That was our very first logo done on some plastic paper. That was us decorating it at Christmas. But I was so proud of that little office. That was like a real, like, I've made it moment. I've got my own office. I had one lad who worked for us then. That's my youngest. That's my eldest. She's 10 now. And then within that complex, once we were monetizing the website quite well, it allowed us to hire a couple more people to write on the website, a couple more people to make the pictures, the videos. And then we did the usual. We got a ping pong table. We wanted to be the cool bosses. We were trying to be Google, beanbags, ping pong table, the works. But one thing that was absolutely booming on Facebook and social media at the time was food videos. And it was food videos that were like extreme food videos. So you'd go and buy like 20 Big Macs and you say, could you eat this Big Mac platter? Or one of them we did was we did a KFC gravy fountain. So we got loads of KFC gravy, poured it into a chocolate fountain essentially, and this was the result. So that was and then this was at the point where I was this was our job. This was getting food and making it sexy, and the views things like this got, it didn't lead to a KFC partnership, unfortunately, but we still got, it was still good fun. But the best part about this, that looks good there, but the actual outtakes were, I don't know if you have KFC gravy, it's so thick. So when we initially put it in, it broke the original machine we had and blew the fuse in the office. The office manager come running in going, what's going on? And we blew out the lights. And bearing in mind, in this office complex, there was accountants, there was insurance brokers, boring businesses essentially. And then there was us with the KFC gravy fountain next door saying, sorry, we've blown the... So people didn't know what we were doing in there. But obviously, from that, there was lots of food knocking about, so you don't want to bin it after that. And there was 4 or 5 of us, so you eat it. And what became apparent with I was working long hours in the office, eating all this food. And what I like to say is Fat Ryan appeared at that point. Not just at that point, but over the months of constant eating all this food and just working all hours God sends, I let myself get out of shape. And it was, not till I was going through this, someone told me that I actually look like Mark from The Chase at this point, so rather than Matt Damon. But essentially what I kind of put this in was, in the journey that I was working just so much and so long, I neglected to look after myself. And being a father of 2, it got to a point like afterwards where I was like, I don't want to carry on getting bigger and bigger and be chasing my kids around the park out of breath kind of thing. So it's just, I like to put that in just as a reminder for anyone going through the journey that, yeah, it's great working long hours, but make sure you take time for yourself as well if you can. But then it happened though, the moment we were all waiting for, and this was what I call our kaboom moment. We had all these Facebook pages, so by this point in the journey we had about 4 or 5 million followers because it's gone viral. We'd created other pages from that, things like a pet page, a gaming page, a DIY page, just tried to cover different niches and different verticals. And we noticed the pages that were based in America, adverts had started to pop on their videos. Like you saw on YouTube, those annoying, when you watch a video, it pops up, but it's skip ad, it's one of two. That started to come up and we were like, if we carry on growing these pages and those adverts appear at our end, then we'll be absolutely laughing. And that was what I call our kaboom moment. It was, we woke up to a message of, congratulations, you are now eligible to monetize your Facebook pages. And it was like, right, here we go. So at the time, we were probably earning about £200,000 a year. And I kid you not, overnight, it went to probably 2 million a year at that point. Because the way Facebook were doing it, they were paying you per 1,000 views for like $10, for example. So you can imagine we had a page followings of 5-6 million. Suddenly all these videos get adverts turned on, the income just went straight through. So it's our like proper kaboom moment. And what that allowed us to do, we were still based over in Rochdale at the time, but we'd completely taken the whole floor up at that point. It was only a small complex. It let us get a promotion into the big leagues. And what I mean by that was, because of this extra income, we could finally afford the Manchester city centre offices, and that allowed us to hire better members of staff. And our current staff, they were all travelling out of Manchester on the trains. Most days they were cancelled, so they weren't getting in work till like 10:30, 11. So by moving into Manchester, although it cost us more, we actually got more out of our workforce. We were having people move over from the big companies like your Lad Bibles, your uni lads, coming to work for us because we were kind of new to the game. And so this was our office in Manchester. So you can see it was a lot bigger, a lot swankier than that first yellow-walled postage stamp size office that we had in Rochdale. And I don't know if anybody knows it, but it's Beehive Mill and Ancoats. It's the old Sankey's nightclub just off Oldham Road. So, yeah, exactly where we came from that. So at this point, what we were in a space of, just down the road we had Lad Bible. Unilad were in the same building as them. We had Stephen Bartlett's social chain there, and then there was little old us. Little old It's Gone Viral had got in there. And so at this point, I call ourselves like the Disruptors. Not the Expendables, the Disruptors. So keeping with the superhero theme. So that was, as I mentioned before, so this was us. We were obviously there's me. There was Matt in the middle. He was from Wolverhampton. He was like proper chilled out guy. He was like, if your house was on fire, he'd be putting his arm around you saying, you've got house insurance, don't worry about it. He was so chilled. We had Andrew was like almost your Mark Zuckerberg, like your laser focused kind of guy. And I was kind of somewhere in the middle. And what I think, looking back now, was it was a really good mix. We were a really good mix of a board. And it's the tip I give to people now. If you're going into business with someone or you're co-founding a business with someone, make sure you get on with them. Make sure you like them and make sure your skills complement each other because you're going to be working together a lot over the years and you need to make sure you're not going to constantly be arguing, rutting heads. And while it wasn't a conscious decision, looking back that, we obviously just clicked and we got on. Otherwise, we'd never have gone into business with each other. But then, so this had happened. We had our Manchester offices. We were disrupting. We were doing well. And then the moment nobody was ready for in any industry anywhere was the pandemic. So this video we made next was it was in the kind of the February when coronavirus was starting to, there was news coming that it was in Italy, it was bad, it was China, it was this. But it was that point when people, if you remember, were going, it's not serious, it won't matter, it's like Ebola, it's like swine flu, it'll brush under, nothing will come of it. So we had a message in our group chat going, I'm on the tram and someone got a hazmat suit on the tram. They were that worried about the pandemic, this person. So we had an idea, so I went on to Amazon and I ordered a hazmat suit and a mask. And this was actually me in this video. But I'm putting this on just to show kind of how it was the kind of content we created and how we were trying to make light of what was a bleak future to come, but we thought it was a joke at the time. Yeah, so it was sat in a big office in my hazmat suit, the horrible plastic mask. I the little subtleties. I was Googling hand sanitizer as well. Gone. Yeah, so that was kind of the pandemic, but that was when we thought it was still a joke. And then within the days following that, I had a phone call from my wife, and it was the closing our daughter's school. This was like 2 weeks before Easter holidays. They're closing the school till after Easter, and we were like, oh my word, this is serious now, isn't it? They're closing. And then the news broke an hour or so later that Boris was due his big press conference telling everyone to stay at home. So we had a bit of like an emergency meeting with the board and with the senior staff, like, how are we going to continue from home? Because everyone was working on these all-in-one iMacs. We didn't really have MacBooks at that point because we had the full editing suite. So we sat the staff down and went, look, we're going to be sending you home, but we want to keep business as usual. So can you take your iMacs home? And I was like, yeah, but I'm not taking that on the tram. I'm not taking that on the bus. I'm not walking down Great Ancoat Street with an iMac under my arm. I'll get mugged. So we ordered, I remember the day vividly, we ordered like 20 odd taxis for the members of staff, and they were walking out with their iMacs, getting it into the taxis, and all the Uber drivers were looking, going, like, what's going on? They thought like they were robbing the place or something, because there was just a stream of people walking out of the office with iMacs under their arm. It was just, yeah, it was just absolutely really bizarre times. And then a few of them lived in like one-bedroom flats in Manchester. They were sending us pictures of at the bottom of the bed, their iMacs just propped up on the mattress, and they were like, we're trying to get on with our work. It was just really, really mad times. And then the message, I'm sure everybody remembers, of Boris saying, you must stay at home, all that jazz. So, and then what came from the pandemic, we stayed business as usual. There was staff working from home instantly. But we lost 70% of our income overnight, which was a real kick in the teeth. And by this point, we had like 50, 60 members of staff. And we monetized heavily on Facebook, and 70% of our income was from Facebook advertising. And the first thing that happened in the pandemic is people stopped advertising on Facebook, so Facebook stopped paying adverts out to pages like ours. And they dressed it up, Facebook, as they sent us a message saying your content's no longer unique enough, you're not creating your own stuff. So we're removing monetization, when really it was because they were suffering, but they wouldn't admit it. So it was like the old Little Britta meme. It was computer says no, but it was Facebook says no, essentially. But what actually came of this was, Facebook sent us this. So we went back to Facebook, and they're very hard to get into contact with Facebook, and they said to us, so I said, if you're saying our stuff's not original, how do we make it original? So they sent us this big, long, as they do, FAQ. And it was things like you had to put social commentary on there, you had to edit things, you had to provide value to the user. Because Facebook was very much in a state of, you'd seen one video on one page, someone else would use it, someone else would use it, someone else would use it. So they wanted you to make it unique. So we went through everything. We had to hire, we hired a freelancer who would come in, well, remotely, talk over our videos, give social commentary. People hated it. It was just like, why is there a person talking over these videos? But what came about it was, luckily after 8 weeks, I say luckily, we worked hard over the 8 weeks. They put adverts back on. But because we kind of stayed business as usual, it was, we stayed business as usual. So the pages grew and grew and grew and grew. So when we came out and the adverts came back on, we were absolutely sailing. But what came from this was, as a company, it was like it was time to grow up, and where this became apparent was, like, Facebook took the advertising off us at a really key time. And when we got in contact with them, they didn't know who we were. We were called It's Gone Viral Limited. The page was It's Gone Viral. It was great, but it was one of like 20 things we were doing. We were providing agency work for brands. We were running other people's social medias. We were doing things like video licensing, which was buying and reselling people's viral videos, which during the pandemic, everybody became a video creator. So we sat and we was like, well, we need a different name. So we worked with a branding agency. We come up with a company name that was, it was called Comey Group, which is still named to this day. And it's not an acronym. It doesn't really stand for anything, but it was just a cool name that we really liked. And from this, it just allowed us to have this more all-encompassing name. And then It's Gone Viral was like one of 20 things we did. And at this point, it opened a lot more doors to work with brands. Facebook respected us a lot more, and it was a real. And then, so then the pandemic moved along, started to unlock. We were now Comey Group, and it allowed us just to expand even more. So as you can see, at this point, the size of the team was getting massive. And just going back to the start, for the record, that's not Matt Damon, that's me. So yeah, But what came kind of from this and from the pandemic was the size of the team. I'd started to lose what the business was about. Like because of the pandemic and I hadn't met most of these people before stuff like this. I was walking through the office and me being a director and a co-founder, there was people that were like, they were scared when I was walking in. It felt like Voldemort was walking in from Harry Potter or something. Everyone was scared and it started to make me feel a little bit disconnected because I didn't know the members of staff and my role had changed massively. I was no longer doing the tweets. I was no longer making the videos. I was no longer creating the content. My days were appraisals, spreadsheets, board meetings, and I started to really lose track of why I started this business in the first place. So again, something to bear in mind is this is like a 9-10 year journey. So I'm trying to get this done in 45, 50 minutes. There is big jumps. But from this point now is like what we call the end is near. So you saw that big team photo there. We sat down as a board and it was like, well, what's next for the company? And we decided, well, if we go to look for investment, we can supersede that and we can have 180 members of staff, 200 members of staff, go bigger. Lad Bible had just floated on the public market, so they were getting bigger. But when you go to investment, you have to relinquish shares or go down the loan route. We didn't want to have to owe any collateral. So me and Matt, two of the business partners, decided if the monetary offer was correct, what we wanted, we'd happily step a full step back. Andrew wanted to stay on. He still wanted to carry on driving the train. And then we had a private investor through the network who gave me the offer and Matt the offer that we really wanted. So I was happy days, me. I got the offer, naively thought that was it, done and dusted. That's not me, by the way. I wish it was, but it was. But I put this on because it was my mindset was, I'm on the beach here. I'm just gone. I'm chilling. So this was January 2022. Then as the months kind of went by, the Ukraine war happened and this private investor who was going to buy me and Matt out suffered a big hit in his businesses due to the war and his stocks and shares. He sent us a message saying, sorry, I can't buy your shares anymore. So I'd taken a step back from the business for a good 2-3 months. So I was then on the outside looking in of my own business. It felt like, so I did little pictures, just I couldn't think of anything. So that's literally what I felt, as if my business was inside this house and I couldn't see in. So I was in a real grey area, and it's a little bit of advice for if anyone ever is exiting the business. It's not over till the fat lady sings, that kind of thing. You don't take a step back till you've signed, sealed, delivered, because I was stuck in this rock and hard place of the business had moved on without me, but I wasn't exited, so I couldn't do anything else. But then I couldn't get involved with the business, so I was stuck. But then we went to market. Luckily, we got the offer given to us again by a company called British Growth Fund, which is investors run by, I think it's by the government and a lot of banks. So then this was the 31st of October 2022, so Halloween. Just gone through a really stressful day, signing all the paperwork, trying to sort the bank transactions. Then the elation of obviously the money landing, which is, let's be honest, why we're all kind of doing it. But then my kids go, oh, can we go trick-or-treating now? And it's like this horrible rainy, wet night. I found the video on my timeline. So I just had this massive offer land in my bank and everything. And so I was walking around that estate with my kids and my friends, and I was white. I probably looked like a zombie, which was a great night to do it on Halloween. But I was just like not present. It was a weird feeling, but I put that video on because it shows like it was just another normal day for my kids, but for me it was wild. And then got home, had that nice glass of Prosecco. And then the day after, 1st of November, the deal's done, completely exited. It's like, it's all over. Like, now what again? And then I was kind of woke up and I was thinking like, the elf me like, who am I? Who the heck am I? Like, because I'd not done any. I'd spent years building the business, but I'd never done any outreach of myself, any videos as me. So no one knew who I was. I just had this big multi-million-pound exit from a business. No one knew who I was, but there was a local youth centre at Madlow who put on a little business breakfast for me, went through my story, and I kind of realised at this point I can start telling my story to other people, other business owners now. And I started to enjoy it. I got a lot of good feedback from that event. It was in the Q&A style. Then the bank at Barclays asked me to do a panel to discuss the exit. So I really started to enjoy it. So kind of then I was thinking like, yeah, so it was like, what next? So I'm working on a few different things, doing a lot more of these teachings, but what I'm going to kind of fish out from this story is, obviously this today was just my whistle-stop tour of a very large career, but there's lots of different things I can fish out to help startups, help people scale up, help people exit the business. And for the last 18 months, I've now got what you do once you've exited the business, because it's been a really strange time. I'm working on something called the Content Launchpad, which is helping businesses and creators scale up their short-form content on Instagram, on TikTok. Yeah, so I think that was a video, but there's a bit of swearing in it, so I'll leave it. It threw me because I thought I took that slide out this morning. That's why I was a bit like, what's this next one? So that obviously I've exited now. There's a lot more I want to do. So I thought I'd just kind of leave it on with some key takeaways, just so people get value. So when I look back and reflect on my time, it's one big thing is be a risk taker. And by that, I mean, don't do anything stupid, don't do anything rash, don't go and sell your house, sell your car, whatever, and go all in. But there's ways you can take risks, but take them you have to take the risk, but make sure you do them with a lot of thought. Like when we started the business, financially, I gave myself a year to quit this job, and then I was going to go back into IT, plan for it, but the risk was giving up the IT career. I might never have got that back. And be resilient, because there'll be days where it doesn't go right. Like I mentioned, we had months and months of losing money and working long hours, and it just felt like never ending. It felt like I made a massive mistake, but you've got to be resilient. You've got to get yourself up every single day and be ready. And what I mean by that is things are changing every single day. Like the pandemic was a huge, huge thing there. We had to pivot. There was a huge crisis, but we pivoted. We got onto it. We were not ready for it because you don't know it's coming, but you've got to be ready to be agile and be positive as well. And that links into the resiliency point. It was even since I've exited, I have days where I don't feel positive, but you've got to get into that mindset of thinking, if you keep putting in the hard graft, the hard hours, you will get them rewards, because I'm a firm believer in that. And then the last one was just don't eat too much KFC, because that's what I did over the years. So I thought I'd bang that on there. But in all honesty, though, if you are building a business or you're starting a business, enjoy it. One thing that I look back now on my time was I didn't document it enough. I was in the content creation game of creating viral videos, collating viral videos, posting news, and there was a few obviously old pictures that I've gone through there, but I didn't document it enough. And when I look back, when you're so tied up in the moment, you forget to enjoy it. You forget to enjoy what you're doing. So yeah, that's just why my advice I give to people is, if when you're in the business and when you're growing it, document it, and because times like this you can look back, you can enjoy it. So then my final thoughts, a few people have kind of said, because I try and be humble, I try and not flex or be brag or anything, but I did get a large payout from the business. But people say, what's next? My friends can't believe that I've not buggered off to Lanzarote, where we go a lot, and bought a house there and disappeared into the sunset. But I think that's the entrepreneurial mindset and in me that I want to go again. I'm 34, 35 in a couple of months, 2 young children. I want to create a legacy for them. So I'm still living in the same house. I'm not gone and bought the Aston Martin or the Ferrari, but what I am doing is creating memories for my children. So like I say, that's us in Tenerife. We had the trip of a lifetime to Lapland after the exit, where I come home believing in Father Christmas again. It was that special. It was just so good, and that's taking them to the favourite restaurant, 20 Stories, over in Spinning Fields and such. So, although my friend said to me, God help when people start taking daughters out on dates, because if they take them to Pizza or Nando's, they're not going to be impressed anymore. So I put them on the back foot already, so sorry, future boyfriends. So yeah, I like to leave it on this, that the money can't buy you happiness, but it does bring you a more pleasant form of misery. And what I mean by that is, money doesn't fix everything, but it's great to have. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise, because that's the whole reason we're running a business, let's be honest, and the whole end game. So yeah, that was the end of my talk. Thank you very much. That's if anyone's on there, or Ryan T. Williams official. Yeah, and open the floor. Any questions? Pretty easy now, yeah.
So we've got a few questions from the audience.
Oh yeah.
I was going to say, do you think it's easier harder now to get into social media and like scale than it was like back then?
Yes and no. The platforms are certainly different because, as you say, it was on Twitter that I had my massive boom, and I don't think that happens on Twitter anymore to a certain extent. But I think like there's a lot of people having the success on TikTok now. Things have changed because obviously a lot more into the short form, and yeah, it's a tough one to say because people who are going on the journey now, they'll say, oh yeah, no, it's easy to grow. It depends what level they come in. You know, one thing that I'm going through now is I'm trying to build the brand for myself, whereas back then I was doing brands that were like parody accounts and Twitter accounts. They weren't me. So if I'd have tried to build myself 6 years ago, I might have found it as hard as it is now. So yes and no. It's hard to really say because if you get that correct niche and you get it spot on, I still see new ideas, new concepts coming up all the time. But what I do say is when people say they want to get kind of into it, I go, well, you've got to be something you're passionate about first of all, because I wouldn't have quit this to go and be a butcher because I don't like touching meat kind of thing. So I'd never have brought a big butcher. But if you do something and you really enjoy it and you see it on social media, you see others doing it, there's no harm in. It's not copying homework. If you look at something and think, I can do that better, then there's nothing stopping you doing that and looking at one concept of a niche and going, well, I could do that niche in that industry. So, yeah. Yeah.
How did you find going into business with your partners that you were with?
How did,
Were
yeah.
there sort of issues in the future just because of the three of you?
How did I find going into business with my partners? It was interesting, yeah, because I mentioned before, like there was people like Matt who was brilliant, but he's so laid back. So there was some days when you'd want an answer or you'd want a decision made, and if they're not getting back to you, and you can come across a little bit impatient with each other. So I look back and I think we did get on, and it was very good. Matt actually in the timeline, the guy in Wolverhampton, stepped back a couple of years before properly because I think it all got a little bit too much for him. I think he realised that like we were on WhatsApp all day long talking and it was just a bit much for him. I guess I was very. We were very. I don't like using the word luck because we worked hard, but I mean when I say luck, I mean there was no major fallouts ever. They were always there to have our backs. I think one thing I've learned kind of post-exit is it's not necessarily, you're not friends. You've got to think you look after yourself in the end, especially when you're exiting and you want certain things. But no, I found it okay, yeah. But I think that's because we got on before we went into that. I imagine if you're just going blind with someone, there can be big problems. I have heard of big problems from people. So if you are ever planning on going in with someone, just make sure you do get on with them. And then on the flip of that, if you're already good friends, I've seen that go wrong as well because people lose friendships over business. So if you can, try and separate the two, Yeah. Yeah.
Was it hard to stay humble when you had that many employees and that many millions of followers? Do you have to sort of take steps to not, let your head get too big as probably with a lot of people?
Yeah. Was it hard to stay humble? Yes, and I think that's mainly because they were brand pages. If it was me with 11 million followers, maybe I would have acted a little bit different, but because they were brand pages and as I kind of say, there was a little bit, but there was at times where I wanted to tell people more. Like I was on holiday and I was talking to someone and they were into football, and my wife starts giving me the eyes, and it's basically to say, don't you dare tell them that you own this Deluded Brendan account. And it become a running joke with my mates on a night out. I'd be talking to someone, they'd come over and go, oh, have you told them about Deluded Brendan on Twitter then, have you yet? So, because every now and again, if someone knew the account, it didn't half give me a buzz because that was mine. But I think staying humble, I've always stayed humble, even like post-exit as well. Like, it's taken me a while to tell the story, the multi-million-pound exit, so to speak, because I never really wanted to alienate myself or rub people up the wrong way. But the more and more people I speak to, they're like, no, tell it, because it is motivating people to think, if I've done it, well, if he's done it, so can I, kind of thing. So, but yeah, I am quite a humble person, so I didn't particularly find it hard, but I guess at times I did want to tell people more. Yeah. Yeah.
How many offices do you have around the UK?
How many offices did we have? So we just the one in Manchester. There was remote staff in London. I think someone was just setting up in New York remotely, but actual physical offices, just the one in Manchester. I think the plans were to get more offices, but I think the pandemic put a shot to that, and it made the world realise just how well remote work can happen, because I know a lot of companies ended up closing their offices during the pandemic because working from home works so well. So yeah, so that was just the one in Manchester. So it was good to be pioneering the social media space in Manchester with a few of the other big businesses.
Any further questions? Yeah, John.
Do you think it's important to have an accountant earlier on in your business, or?
Important to have an accountant? Yeah, because it's a really good point that it is, and the reason it is important is my takings from school, I was talking to someone before about this, was when I did business studies at my sixth form, it didn't engage with me because it was a lot of spreadsheets, it was a lot of accountancy, and I left sixth form thinking, to be in business, you've got to be an accountant, you've got to be that. And it becomes apparent like there's so, like say, access to accountants, to HR companies. Now you don't have to be a jack of all trades. If your skill set doesn't lie in numbers in accountancy, everyone needs to know the basic. You need to be earning more than you spend, otherwise you're in the red. But I think the accountancy is important. But it's important to find the right one, because you'll get some that want to charge you the earth, charge you a lot of money for. And when you're relatively small, it's not that complicated. It really isn't, but they upsell a lot. But I think it's important because it's okay, I think, for your tax returns, but the minute you start getting members of staff on board, that's when your accountants become correct, because you want to get the PAYE right. Because if you get the wages wrong, you end up with a bill, and you want to. So I'd say it become more prevalent when you have staff, or especially when you start getting over the £80,000 threshold for VAT as well. You have to do your VAT returns. If you've got an accountant looking after all that, yeah, it's important. But early doors, we just kept everything in a simple spreadsheet, really, and then just gave it to an accountant once a year, not really one that was full-time, just one for the tax return. So, yeah.
Any further questions? So if it's okay, I was going to ask one or two just things that relate back to the assignments
Yeah.
for our students. So may as well go from what you just said with regards to the sort of financial side, because this is something that we're looking at as part of the assessment in terms of the cash flow, P&L,
Yeah.
balance sheet. So it's funny really, because last week we sort of pitched it that on this sort of startup unit that the students are doing, we're coming at it predominantly from an SME owner's lens as opposed to like a financial analyst expert's lens.
Yeah.
And more so, would you agree that you need to sort of be able to have a basic sort of navigation of these financial documents, particularly when you're looking to grow as a firm? So for example, being able to say, measure growth year on year in your net, your gross, your operational profit margins, and so on.
Yeah, it is really important, because as you say, it allows you to scale. Because what we did a lot, someone fed back this to me before, I'm going to put it in for future, is we bootstrapped ourselves. By that part, what I mean is we never took a loan, we never took investment until obviously the exit investment. So what we did was everything we earned from the off, other than paying our wages of the directors, we just reinvested. And we just had this reinvestment model from the off. And like I say, to do that, once we start to get to a size, it was working with an accountant to make sure that we're not reinvesting too much that we then can't pay the bills. Because as directors, we were actually paying ourselves massively under what would be market rate for a director. We were just directors by proxy, by being shareholders kind of thing. We were paying ourselves a humble wage. And that was to ensure that we got the constant growth coming, because we could have stayed smaller and took a nice salary, but by reinvesting it all in, it allowed us to grow and grow and grow, and then get eventual that big exit. Because there was a lot of companies, especially in our space, that like Unilad, they completely buggered up their cash flow, so to speak, and they got themselves in massive debt. And Lad Bible, their biggest rival, bought them by buying the debt off them. And that was because they were just too focused. They didn't, as you say, they didn't do the accountancy side of things because they didn't know how important it was. Yeah, so it's...
Looking after that cash flows.
Yeah. And as well with the cash, as well as we reinvested, we always had a bit of this, we had the crisis pot that we called. And that was, when that pandemic hit and the 70% revenue dropped, what come from the board meeting was we had 3 months in the bank of overheads, essentially, before we had to start furloughing staff, letting staff go. We worked hard and got it back on after 8 weeks. But that allowed us to not, that first 2 weeks, go, right, 70% of you are now furloughed to match this 70% drop, which was great for, like you said, great for the morale, and because that was the last thing we wanted to do, be laying people off. So if you can with a business, as well as alongside, is have your little sluice pot, have your rainy day fund, they call it, don't they? If you can, it's well worth doing, because you never know what's around the corner.
Just a final question from me. With the assessment too, we sort of look at the feasibility of a business, the sort of marketability, the operations and so on. And I sort of picked up from your delivery then, it's very important to read market trends.
Yeah.
In terms of, where the next, in your circumstance, where the next, say, social media platform is, or the way you picked up on the contemporary trend. Unfortunately, I had to live through, I'm a Liverpool fan.
Oh, so
yeah. I also was aware of the Luda Brand.
Oh, nice one, that's good, yeah.
Yeah, and I had to live through managing my team, sadly.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you were fairly reactionary to an idea. So could you share how important that is in terms of, picking up on consumer pains and trends and places and jumping on top of it?
Yeah, it's important to be reactionary, but what also happened alongside of that, I would say, I think when I made Deluded Brendan, I'd made Deluded Brendan, and I think I made like Potty Brendan or something like that. And I tried to, and we're in it's what you call like A/B testing now. I probably made over 100 Twitter accounts, if not more, over my time, and probably had 10 successful ones. So as well as being reactionary, it was testing different things at that moment. God knows how many email addresses I've opened over the years to open a new Twitter account. Yeah, that's not worked, change it. So as well as being reactionary, it's testing different things and with slight name changes. And another thing I'm a fan of with the reactionary is people. I don't want people to think it's like plagiarism or copying, but if you kind of see an idea that's good, it hasn't. You're not going to go and create like Nike trainers instead of Nike. I don't mean that level of ripping off, but if you see something that's okay and you think I can do that better, there's nothing stopping you. Like in this world, it's a little bit different with a full established business, but especially on social media, that's where a lot of the growth came from. But the reactionary thing was really key, and especially posting to your audience as well is, for example, with Deluded Brendan was, say it was a Champions League night and Liverpool were playing. If you put out a tweet at half time, you just know there's going to be thousands of eyes on it. But if I'd have put that tweet out at 3 a.m, like no relevance. So it's good to tailor whatever account you're running to your audience, and it's the same if you look at the analytics. If you look at the analytics, I had a client a few weeks ago. They had this Facebook page. They were like, no one's engaging. I was like, all right, look. And they were posting at 6 o'clock in the UK evening. Went into their analytics. They had something like 90% Australian fans. So they were posting in the middle of the night in Australia, and then they changed the times, and they're now getting engagement. So you've got to post around your audience and, like I say, reactionary. And if you run something that's news-based or trend-based, they get the first worm, so to speak.
So finding your target audience is
Yes, yeah.
Going back to ISCON Viral, you mentioned during the pandemic that Facebook took 70% of your income.
Yeah.
Was that foreseeable? Did that happen just completely out of nowhere? Were you aware that was going to happen?
Facebook taking away our income, it was a slight worry that just in general of the market, of a pandemic's come, we didn't know how the world was going to act. But it was a horrible shock when it happened, because it happened pretty quick, and it was all just a bit baffling that they hid behind an excuse as they do in California over there. They didn't want to admit, we've got no money, so we can't pay you any money. They hid behind make everything unique, but we didn't. I think it was all just as the pandemic was on. Nobody really realised how bad it was, because if you remember that the early doors was, after Easter we'd all go back to normal. It was an initial 4-week lockdown, and then it all got extended. So I imagine Silicon Valley were all running around scared, but it was. We didn't foresee it in that aspect, but that's why we always tried to keep 2 or 3 months overheads saved for a disaster like that, because what we went through after that was the model was like 70% income coming from Facebook. We were like, we need to diversify it if this happens again. So that's why we started to try and take more client work on, or even I think after that they heavily tackled Snapchat, for example, just to make sure we wasn't also platform dependent. There was, like say, agency work. There was what came from the pandemic was a massive the video licensing. So, do you know I don't know if you've ever had where a video will go viral on your own personal page. People want to come in and buy it on that, and so we started to do that because we were getting sent hundreds of videos a day. 99% of them were rubbish because everybody thinks their pet is the funniest thing. Everybody thinks their child does the funniest thing, and they're not. But every now and again, you get an absolute nugget. There was a brilliant one in the pandemic of it was a garden, and a guy flattened his fence, and him and his mate were playing ping pong. Him and his neighbour were playing ping pong just at a social distance. He filmed it, went viral, and one of our team licensed it dead quick. And the Jimmy Kimmel show in America featured it and paid like $1,000 for it. So we took like a $400 split from that, and the end user got like 600, and it was a model that was really popular. So from the crisis, it allowed us to actually realise the big holes in the business. Yeah. So it's just show good things can happen if you pivot and act quickly and not panic. Yeah, but yeah. So yeah.
Any sort of final questions? Any questions with regards to maybe pointers for growth or anything at all? That's you. Right, one more.
Sure.
Like coming to the auction.
When you expanded over multiple different occasions, when did you know that it was time to expand? Did you have a monetary figure in mind, or was it literally just based off instinct?
Yeah, it was instinct, and the internal expansion in Rochdale was just purely, the first one was a 3-man office, so suddenly we had 4 or 5 members of staff. We were too big for that. We moved just down the corridor then away, and the reason we moved into Manchester was we were looking to grow again, and we interviewed a couple of really, really good candidates, and they spoke to us, because this is obviously in the days before working from home. So they rang us up and said, I really would love to take this job, but I can't travel out to Rochdale every day. Is there any chance I can do this job from home? And at the time it was like, well, not really. You need to be in the office, unfortunately. And that happened a good 2 or 3 times. And we were like, we're missing out on good talent here. We're missing out on good members of staff. So even though it's going to cost more to go into the city centre, what we will get from this better talent is more videos, more earnings. So it was speculating to accumulate, really. So that was the big strategic decision by that point. It wasn't a specific moment, but as I mentioned there, the Facebook advertising revenue allowed us to fund that. But because for me, it was actually, the reason we had a Rochdale office, I lived in Oldham. It was 10 minutes down just the side road for me. And that was why I chose there. So actually, when we went into Manchester, it was counter for me in a way. It was a lot further of a commute, but for the good of the company, it had to happen because it was no longer just my company. It was the 30 or 40 other members of staff that we were starting to grow. So, yeah, that answers that.
Okay, folks, any final questions? We've had this a few times now. Any final ones? So hopefully everyone's took an awful lot from that. There's no better insight, in my opinion, than someone that's been there and done it. So we could just give another round of applause to me.
Bill,
Cheers.
thanks for having me.
Alright, thank you. So, I mean, as another point, I would definitely make sure everybody reach out? Is it okay if they
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
if you want to follow up with any later questions that you may have?
Reach out, I won't read it, but it's fine, the shocking.
So, for those on the unit, if you could stay up, please, we're going to start our session now.